They came out of fold space like a beast waking from sleep. 17 kilometers of black metal and glowing engines. She was the largest thing humanity had ever built. She was not made for peace. She was made because for 300 years, humanity had listened to the stars and heard nothing. No signals, no messages, no signs of life, just empty silence stretching across the universe like a warning nobody understood. Captain Park stood at the observation deck with his hands behind his back. He was 62 years old. His hair had turned gray long ago, and deep lines marked his face like rivers on a map. He had spent his whole life in the military, preparing for enemies that never showed themselves. Now he commanded 400 souls and enough weapons to break a moon in half. But what he saw through the viewport made him forget about weapons. There was something out there, something huge, something that should not exist. "Lieutenant," he said without looking away from the viewport, "tell me what I am seeing." Was young, only 28, with sharp eyes and quick fingers that danced across her control panel. Her voice stayed calm, but noticed her hands were shaking. "Sir, it is a station, a space station, about 800 kilometers wide." Felt his chest tighten. 800 kilometers. That was larger than any planet's moon, larger than anything humans had ever imagined building. "Is it active?" he asked. "No power readings, Captain. No life signs, but the design." Paused, swallowing hard. "It does not match anything in our records. This is not human. This is not anything we know." Chief Science Officer pushed through the bridge crew to reach the main console. He was a thin man with glasses that always seemed to be sliding down his nose. His face had gone pale as milk as he stared at his readings. "Captain, I have been scanning the surface. The station is old, very old, at least 40,000 years." 40,000 years. When this station was built, humans were still living in caves and hunting with stone tools. "There is more," continued. His voice had dropped to almost a whisper. "There are markings all over the surface, some kind of writing. The computer is trying to translate it now." Commander Shin stepped closer. She was second in command, a woman of 45 with a face that rarely showed emotion, but even she looked troubled now. "Writing, from 40,000 years ago, how can we possibly translate something that old?" "The computer found patterns," explained. "Mathematical patterns, the same ones we use, the same ones any intelligent species would use. Mathematics is universal. From there, it built a basic understanding of their language." The bridge fell silent. Everyone waited. The translation scrolled across screen and his face went from pale to gray. "What does it say?" asked. Looked up, his eyes were wide with something that might have been fear. "It says, they are listening, do not wake them." Nobody spoke, nobody moved. The words hung in the air like poison. "Who is listening?" asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Before anyone could answer, the station changed. Lights began to appear on its surface, one by one, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. 40,000 years of darkness, and now the ancient structure was waking up. Chief Engineer rushed to his station. He was a big man with thick arms and hands that had built half the systems on this ship. "Captain, I am reading massive energy spikes. The station is powering up. Whatever is in there, it knows we are here." "Shields up," ordered. "All weapons to ready status." The crew moved with practiced speed, but could see the fear in their eyes. They had trained for war against enemies they could understand. Not this. Not something older than human civilization itself. The station's lights grew brighter. Then, without warning, every communication system on the screen to life. Static filled the bridge, followed by a sound that makes blood run cold. A voice. It spoke in a language that should have been impossible to understand, but somehow every person on that bridge understood it perfectly. The words seemed to form directly in their minds, bypassing their ears entirely. "New species dietiacetide. Evaluation BGINS. Dr. Iam came running onto the bridge. She was the ship's chief medical officer, a small woman with gentle hands and worried eyes. "Captain, the crew is panicking. Everyone heard that voice. What is happening?" Did not answer. He could not answer. He was staring at the station, watching as a beam of light shot out from its center and began scanning from front to back. "It is reading us," said, his voice cracking. "Our computers, our records, our history, everything we have stored in our databases, it is taking all of it." "Can we stop it?" demanded. "No, the technology is too advanced. It would be like an ant trying to stop a human from reading a book." The scanning light faded. For a moment there was silence again. Then the voice returned. "Species designation, human. Origin, Sol system, third planet. Technological status, early interstellar. Military capacity, Titan-class ACHIVED." Gripped the railing in front of him. His knuckles turned white. "Titan-class achievement triggers automatic evaluation protocol. All registered species have been notified. Gathering will commence." "Gathering?" looked at her captain with wide eyes. "Gathering of what?" The answer came not from the station but from his own sensors. Stared at his readings like a man watching his own death approach. "Captain, fold space signatures, dozens of them. No, hundreds. Ships are coming from everywhere." Walked slowly to the main viewport. Outside, the darkness of space was beginning to tear open. Holes in reality appeared, each one glowing with strange light, and from those holes came ships. Ships like nothing humanity had ever seen. Some were made of crystal that sang with colors human eyes could not name. Some looked like living things, with skin and veins and beating hearts. Some were perfect geometric shapes that seemed to twist and fold in ways that hurt to look at. They came in all sizes, from small scouts to massive vessels that dwarfed even the. And they kept coming. Within an hour, over 500 alien ships filled the space around the ancient station. They formed a perfect sphere, maintaining exact distances from each other and from the. They did not attack. They did not communicate. They simply waited. Stood beside her captain, watching the impossible sight. "They are not here to fight us," she said quietly. "Look at their formations, defensive positions. They are scared." "Scared of what?" asked. "Maybe scared of us. Maybe scared of the station. Maybe scared of what happens next." She turned to face him. "Captain, we came out here looking for life. We found it. Now what do we do?" Had no answer. He had prepared his whole life for battle, for enemies he could shoot at, for problems he could solve with weapons and tactics. But this was something else. This was first contact with not one alien species, but hundreds. This was judgment from something older than human memory. This was a test he did not understand, with rules nobody had explained. He looked at his crew. 400 people who had trusted him to lead them into the unknown. 400 lives depending on what he did next. "We wait," he said finally. "We watch, and we try to understand what we have walked into." Outside, the ancient station pulsed with light, and 500 alien species watched humanity with eyes that held 40,000 years of secrets. The silence between the stars had been broken. Now everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. 3 days passed, 3 days of watching, 3 days of waiting, 3 days of slowly going mad from the silence. Captain Park had not slept more than a few hours since the gathering began. He stood on the bridge of the, surrounded by screens showing 500 alien vessels hanging in space like a jury waiting to deliver a verdict. None of them had spoken. None of them had moved. They simply watched. "Coffee, Captain." He turned to find Dr. Iam holding out a steaming cup. Her eyes were tired, but she managed a small smile. "You cannot lead on an empty stomach and no sleep." Took the cup, the warmth felt good in his hands. "How is the crew?" "Scared, confused. Some are praying, some are crying, but they are holding together." She paused. "They believe in you, Captain. Whatever happens next, they will follow you." Before could respond, Lieutenant called out from her station. "Captain, the station is doing something. Energy readings are spiking again." The ancient structure at the center of everything began to glow brighter. A beam of light shot upward from its core, spreading out like the branches of a tree until it touched every ship in the gathering. Then the light changed, condensing into a shape. A figure stood before them. Made entirely of light, it looked almost human, but not quite. Too tall, too perfect, too still. "I am the Arbiter." The voice filled the bridge, filled every ship, filled every mind. Could feel it in his bones. "I am the last creation of the ARCHITCTS. They built the roads between stars. They connected the galaxy before your ANCSTORS learned to walk upright. I have WAITED here for 43,000 years for this moment." Chief Science Officer was recording everything, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold his device. "The architects," he whispered. "They must have been the first, the ones who made fold space travel possible." The Arbiter continued, its voice without emotion, without warmth. "A new species has achieved Titan-class capability. This is the threshold. This is the test." "Test?" Commander Shin stepped forward. "What test?" The Arbiter turned toward her. Though it had no eyes, could feel it looking at her, looking through her. The ARCHITCTS learned a terrible truth. They paid for this knowledge with their existence. The truth is this: the galaxy cannot survive species who build weapons of extinction without the wisdom to control themselves. The light figure raised one hand, and suddenly images filled the space around them. Planets burning, stars dying, entire civilizations turned to ash. 47 species have reached your level of power. 23 failed the evaluation. Their ROADS were closed. Their stars now burn alone. Their people are trapped on single worlds forever, unable to reach the stars again. Engineer cursed under his breath. "Captain, I am running calculations on the station's power output. If that thing decides to close our roads," he shook his head, "we could never reopen them. The technology is thousands of years beyond us." The other species said, speaking directly to the Arbiter. "The ones who passed, what did they do?" "They proved restraint. They showed they could build weapons of ending and choose not to use them." The Arbiter's form flickered, and new images appeared. A massive warship being dismantled, its weapons turned into tools for building. A fleet of destroyers converted into hospital ships. A species using their most powerful weapon to push an asteroid away from a populated world, saving billions of lives. The GATHERED species have already been EVALUATED. They have been found adequate. They chose peace over destruction. They earned their place among the stars. "And us?" asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Humanity, you are new. You have built a weapon capable of ending WORLDS before you have met a single neighbor. Your actions suggest fear. Your history SUGGSTS violence." Felt the weight of those words pressing down on him. He thought of human history, the wars, the bombs, the cruelty humans had shown each other for thousands of years. "Your evaluation BGINS now. You have one cycle of your home star to prove your worth." 1 year calculated. We have 1 year. Fail, and your roads will be closed forever. Your children will look up at the stars and know they can never reach them. Your species will grow old and die on a single world, alone in the universe. The Arbiter's form began to fade. "Wait," called out. "What are we supposed to do? How do we prove ourselves?" "That is for you to discover. I measure not just actions but intent, not just words but HEARTS. You cannot deceive me." Then it was gone, leaving only silence and the watching eyes of 500 alien species. Within hours, the first alien delegation requested permission to board the ambassador had never expected to use her diplomatic training for something like this. She had volunteered for this mission thinking she would probably die in the cold emptiness of space. Instead, she found herself sitting across a table from creatures that looked like living clouds, walking stones, and hive minds that spoke through dozens of small bodies. The representative was the first to speak. It looked like a cloud of glowing particles, constantly shifting and changing color. Its voice sounded like wind through leaves. "We do not wish you harm, young species, but we have seen this before. Young races with powerful weapons and untested hearts. The architects fell to this same path. They created weapons that could crack reality itself, and in the end, they destroyed themselves." The envoy rumbled in agreement. It was a creature of stone and moss, ancient beyond imagination, with crystals growing from its shoulders that pulsed with soft light. And after them, the Dominion, the Pale Wanderers, so many species who reached for the stars and burned themselves in the reaching. 23 species, Ambassador said. 23 civilizations trapped forever on single worlds. Are any of them still alive? Some, the replied. They live on, generation after generation, looking up at stars they can never reach. Some have gone mad with the waiting. Others have accepted their fate. None have ever been freed. The syndicate of a hive mind that controlled a dozen small insect-like bodies chittered in what might have been laughter. The arbiter does not forgive. It does not forget. It does not change its mind. Once the verdict is given, it is forever. Kept her face calm, though her heart was racing. "What do you want from us? Why did you come here to watch?" "Because we remember," the said slowly. "We remember our own evaluations. We remember the fear, the uncertainty, the weight of judgment. We came to witness, yes, but also to hope." Hope leaned forward. "You hope we pass." The particles swirled faster, colors deepening. "The galaxy has been quiet for too long. Species grow isolated. We stop talking to each other. We stop learning from each other. If humanity passes this test, you will bring something new, new ideas, new perspectives, new songs we have never heard. And if we fail?" Silence fell over the room. The aliens looked at each other with expressions that needed no translation. "Then we will mourn for you," the said finally, "and the silence will continue." Back on the bridge, Captain received report after report from Ambassador. He learned of species that had achieved peace through unity, through evolution, through the slow death of their darker impulses. He learned of the architects who had connected the stars only to destroy themselves in civil war. He learned that the arbiter had been waiting for 40,000 years, judging every species that reached for the power to end worlds. And he learned that in all that time, no one had ever questioned the test itself. "It does not seem fair," Lieutenant said quietly. "We build one ship, and suddenly we are on trial for the sins of our entire species." Commander shook her head. "Fair has nothing to do with it. This is survival, not just ours but the galaxy's. They have seen species like us destroy everything around them. They are protecting themselves." "So what do we do?" Engineer asked. Turn it into a hospital, save an asteroid from hitting something." Did not answer. He was staring at the viewport, watching the alien ships that surrounded them. 500 species, each one waiting to see what humanity would do. He thought of Earth, his daughter who he had never met, the billions of people going about their lives, not knowing that their entire future hung in the balance. He thought of human history, the wars and the peace treaties, the cruelty and the kindness, the bombs that destroyed cities and the doctors who spent their lives saving strangers. Humanity was not one thing. It never had been. It was 1,000 different things fighting inside the same skin. And somehow that had to be enough. "We have 1 year," he said finally. 1 year to show them who we really are." He turned to face his crew. "Let us begin." The days blended together like water mixing with water. 1 week passed, then 2. The crew of the worked without rest, trying to understand what the arbiter wanted from them. But understanding something older than human civilization was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. In the engine room, Chief Engineer stood before the fold drive, the heart of the ship's power. It hummed with energy that could tear holes in space itself. He had designed most of its safety systems. He knew exactly how much destruction it could cause if turned into a weapon. I could break it, he said to himself. Destroy the drive, make the ship harmless. But would that be enough? Would that be the right answer? Or would it seem like cowardice, like humanity running away from its own power instead of learning to control it? He slammed his fist against the wall. The metal rang like a bell. On the medical deck, Dr. IM was treating the 10th stress-related illness of the day. A young engineer had collapsed from exhaustion. A navigation officer had started crying and could not stop. A weapons technician had locked himself in his quarters and refused to come out. "They are falling apart," she told Captain when he came to check on the crew. "The pressure is too much. They feel like they are carrying the weight of all humanity on their shoulders." "They are," replied quietly. Looked at him with tired eyes. "How do you do it, Captain? How do you stay so calm?" Was silent for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photograph. A little girl with bright eyes and a missing front tooth smiled up at the camera. "My daughter," he said. "She was born 3 years after I left Earth. I have never held her, never heard her voice. She knows me only from video messages sent across the stars." He put the photograph away. "I stay calm because if I fall apart, everyone else will too. But inside," he shook his head, "inside I am just as scared as everyone else." In the conference room, Ambassador continued her meetings with the alien delegations. She learned more each day, but every answer brought new questions. "Tell me about the species that passed," she asked the representative. "What made them different?" The cloud of particles shifted colors, settling into a soft blue. They dismantled their warships and used the materials to build shelters on dying worlds. The Syndicate of created a network of healing stations throughout their territory, offering help to any species in need. My own people chose to share our technology freely, holding nothing back. And those who failed. The blue deepened to gray. They tried to destroy the Arbiter itself. They fired everything they had at the station. It did nothing. Their roads were closed before the last missile faded. Leaned forward. They attacked. Why would they do something so foolish? Fear, pride, the belief that they could fight their way out of judgment. This voice grew sad. They were a proud people, strong warriors. They could not accept being judged by something they had not chosen. What happened to them? They still exist, trapped in their home system. They have spent 15,000 years watching ships from other species pass through their skis, unable to follow. Their children are taught that the stars are forbidden. Their dreams have become prisons. Felt cold. She imagined human children, thousands of years from now, looking up at night sky full of moving lights they could never reach. "There must be something we can do," she said, "some way to prove ourselves." "That is not for us to decide," they replied. "The Arbiter watches everything. It sees your actions, yes, but it also sees your reasons. You cannot trick it with grand gestures. It knows if your hearts are true." Chief Science Officer had barely left his laboratory since the evaluation began. He was surrounded by screens showing every piece of data about the station, the Arbiter, and the gathered species. "I have been studying the patterns," he told Commander when she came to check on him. "The Arbiter's evaluation process, the species who passed, the species who failed. I was looking for some kind of formula, some rule we could follow." "Did you find one?" Laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No, that is the problem. There is no formula. Species who gave up their weapons passed. Species who kept their weapons but used them for defense also passed. Species who became pacifists passed. Species who remained warriors but fought only against true evil also passed." Frowned. "That does not make sense. If there is no pattern, how can we know what to do? That is what I finally understood. Took off his glasses and rubbed his tired eyes. The Arbiter is not looking for a specific action. It is looking for something deeper, something we cannot fake. What? I do not know how to explain it. Truth, maybe. Sincerity. The Arbiter is trying to see who we really are, not who we pretend to be. In his quarters, Captain sat alone in the darkness. He had turned off all the lights, all the screens. He wanted nothing but silence and shadow. He thought about his life. 50 years of military service, training for wars that never came, building weapons that were never fired, preparing for enemies that never showed themselves. And now here he was, commanding the most powerful weapon humanity had ever created, being judged by a machine older than human memory. What did it mean to be human? He thought about the wars, the terrible wars that had human history, the bombs that had destroyed cities, the camps where millions had died, the cruelty that humans had shown to each other again and again throughout the ages. But he also thought about other things. The firefighters who ran into burning buildings to save strangers, the doctors who worked through plagues, knowing they might catch the disease themselves, the soldiers who threw themselves on grenades to protect their friends, the ordinary people who shared their food with hungry neighbors, who took in orphans, who risked their lives for people they did not even know. Humans were capable of terrible things, but they were also capable of great things. That was the truth, not one or the other, both together fighting inside the same heart. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in." Lieutenant entered, her face pale in the dim light. "Captain, the Arbiter is speaking again. You should come to the bridge." Followed her through the corridors of the ship. Crew members pressed against the walls as he passed, their faces showing fear and hope and everything in between. They were counting on him. 400 people, plus billions more back on Earth, all waiting for him to find the answer. On the bridge, the Arbiter's projection filled the main viewport. Its voice rolled through the ship like thunder. "I have been watching. I have seen your meetings with the other species. I have seen your DISCUSSIONS, your DBATES, your ARGUMNTS. I have seen your fear." Stood tall, refusing to show how much his legs wanted to shake. "But I have also seen other things." The projection changed. Suddenly, the bridge was filled with images from the ship's internal cameras, moments the crew had thought were private. Engineer helping a young technician fix a broken system, staying patient even when she made the same mistake 3 times. Doctor holding the hand of a dying crew member, singing softly to ease his passing. 2 officers sharing their food with a colleague who had forgotten to eat. A group of engineers working through the night to repair damage, then collapsing together in exhausted laughter. Small moments, human moments, kindness hidden in the spaces between fear. "These are the things that interest me," the Arbiter said. "Not your weapons, not your speeches, but the quiet choices you make when no one is watching." The projection faded, leaving the crew in stunned silence. Looked at his people, at their tired faces, their trembling hands, their hearts full of fear and hope. And for the first time since the evaluation began, he felt something other than despair. He felt pride. These were his people, flawed, frightened, uncertain, but also kind, also brave, also willing to help each other even when everything seemed lost. Maybe that was the answer, not some grand gesture, not some perfect solution. Just being human. Whatever that meant. 6 months had passed since the evaluation began. 6 months of watching, 6 months of waiting, 6 months of slowly losing hope. The Arbiter had not spoken again since showing those images on the bridge. The alien ship still surrounded still watching, still silent, and the crew was beginning to crack. Captain Park called a meeting of all senior officers in the main conference room. The faces around the table looked like ghosts. dark circles under every eye, hollow cheeks. The weight of judgment was crushing them slowly, like stones piled one by one on their chests. "We need to do something," Commander Shin said. "The crew cannot take much more of this waiting. They need purpose. They need hope." "What would you suggest?" Ambassador asked. "We have tried everything, peaceful broadcasts, offers of friendship, sharing our technology. Nothing has made the Arbiter speak again." Chief Engineer shook his head. "Maybe that is the point. Maybe there is nothing we can do. Maybe it has already decided and this waiting is just torture before the sentence." "No," Dr. M spoke quietly, but her voice was firm. "I do not believe that. The Arbiter showed us those images for a reason. It wanted us to see that it was watching the small things, the human things." "But what does that mean?" Lieutenant asked. "What are we supposed to do with that information?" Silence fell over the room. No one had an answer. Then Chief Science Officer cleared his throat. "I have been thinking about this for months, going over everything we know about the Arbiter, about the species that passed, about the species that failed." Everyone turned to look at him. "The aliens told us that species passed by showing restraint, by proving they could build weapons of destruction and choose not to use them. But I think they missed something important." "What?" asked. "They also told us that the species who passed had evolved beyond their darker impulses. They became purely peaceful. They spent learning to control their anger. They gave up individual identity to become a hive mind that always thinks of the group first." Stood up and walked to the viewport. Outside, the alien ships hung like stars that had forgotten how to shine. These species passed because they became less capable of destruction. They cut away the parts of themselves that could cause harm. But humanity, he turned back to face the group. We have not done that. We still have all our darkness. We still have all our capacity for violence and cruelty. That is not exactly encouraging, muttered. Wait, let me finish. Eyes were bright now, alive with something that looked like hope. The aliens see that as a weakness, but what if it is actually our strength? Frowned. How can our capacity for violence be a strength? Because we have it and we choose not to use it every single day. His voice grew stronger. They cannot be violent. They are not capable of it anymore. But humans, we wake up every morning with the power to hurt, to destroy, to cause pain. And most of us choose not to, not because we cannot, but because we will not. Leaned forward, go on. Think about it. A lion that does not eat meat is not showing restraint. It is simply not a meat eater, but a person who could steal but chooses to work honestly. A soldier who could kill but chooses to protect. A leader who could abuse power but chooses to serve, spread his hands. That is true restraint. That is true strength. The strength to be capable of evil and choose good anyway. The room was silent. Everyone was thinking, turning the idea over in their minds like a strange stone found on a beach. "He is right," said slowly. "I have seen it in the crew. They are scared. They are angry. Some of them want to fight, want to do something, anything. They have the capacity for violence, but they hold it back. They support each other instead." Ambassador nodded. "And human history. Yes, there are wars and cruelty, but there are also hospitals built in war zones, aid workers who run toward danger instead of away, people who risk their lives for strangers." "We are not perfect," said. "We never have been, we never will be." "That is exactly the point," replied. "We do not need to be perfect. We need to be honest. We need to show the Arbiter who we really are. Not what we think it wants to see, but the truth, all of it, the good and the bad." As if summoned by his words, the Arbiter's voice filled the room without warning. "I have heard your discussion." Everyone jumped. The projection did not appear this time, just the voice, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "Your words are interesting, but words are easy. I have seen many species speak beautifully about peace while planning war in their hearts." "Then look in our hearts," said, standing to face the empty air. "You said you could see our intentions, our truth. Look at us. See what we really are." I have been looking. Since the moment you arrived, I have seen everything. Images began to appear again, but this time they were not from the ship. They were from Earth, from human history. Battlefields soaked in blood, cities burning, mushroom clouds rising over destroyed civilizations, humans killing humans in every way imaginable. The crew watched in horror and shame. But the images continued, and they began to change. A nurse carrying wounded soldiers from no man's land, ignoring the bullets flying past her head. A man standing in front of tanks, holding nothing but a grocery bag. Firefighters climbing stairs into a burning building, while everyone else ran down. A woman hiding strangers in her home during a genocide, knowing she would die if discovered. Thousands of hands reaching out, thousands of acts of kindness, thousands of moments when humans chose love over hate, sacrifice over selfishness, courage over fear. You are correct, the Arbiter said. You are not perfect. You are broken in ways that most species are not. Your capacity for destruction is matched only by your capacity for cruelty to your own kind. The crew bowed their heads. But they looked up. Your capacity for love is also greater than most. Your courage, your willingness to sacrifice for others, even strangers, even enemies. The images shifted again. Now they showed the crew of the small kindnesses, the quiet moments of support, the way they held each other up when everything seemed hopeless. I have evaluated 47 species. I have studied thousands of civilizations. I have watched the rise and fall of empires that lasted longer than your species has existed. Held his breath. And I have never seen anything quite like humanity. What does that mean? Asked. Is that good or bad? I do not know. The admission seemed to surprise even the Arbiter itself. The voice paused for a long moment. For the first time in 43,000 years, I do not know what verdict to give. Lieutenant stepped forward. Her voice was shaking, but she spoke anyway. Then do not give a verdict, give us a chance. Watch what we do, judge us by our actions, not our potential. That is what I have been doing. Then keep doing it, she said. Watch us, see who we become. Maybe we will fail, maybe we will prove all your fears right, but maybe we will surprise you. Silence stretched across the room, across the ship, across the void between stars. You already have. And for the first time the Arbiter almost sounded curious. 1 year, 365 days of judgment. The evaluation period was ending. Captain Park stood on the bridge of the for what might be the last time. Around him, his crew waited in silence. Lieutenant at her tactical station, Chief Science Officer at his sensors, Commander Shin standing at his side like a statue carved from steel and determination, Chief Engineer, his big hands steady despite everything, Dr. IM, who had held their hearts together when fear threatened to tear them apart, Ambassador, who had spoken for humanity to creatures beyond imagination. 400 souls, one ship, and outside, 500 alien species watching to see if humanity would be allowed to reach for the stars. The ancient station at the center of everything began to glow, brighter and brighter, until the light hurt to look at. Then the Arbiter appeared, its form of pure light standing before them like a god made visible. The evaluation period has ended. Felt his heart stop. This was it, the moment everything changed. I have watched your species for one cycle of your home star. I have seen your history, your present, and the SHADOWS of your possible futures. I have measured your HEARTS and found them full of contradictions. The Arbiter raised one hand, and holographic images filled the bridge, simulations running at impossible speed. In 10,000 simulations of humanity's future, you bring war to the galaxy in 63% of OUTCOMES. You conquer, you destroy, you consume, Your darkness spreads across the stars like a disease. Closed his eyes. Behind him, he heard someone start to cry. Bayuti. He opened his eyes. In 37% of SIMULATIONS, you become something else. The images changed. Instead of war, they showed cooperation. Human doctors working alongside alien healers. Human engineers helping rebuild worlds damaged by ancient disasters. Human teachers sharing knowledge with species who had forgotten how to dream. In these futures, you become bridges. Not between stars, but between peoples. Your contradictions become your gift. You show other species that growth does not require the death of darkness, but the choice to transcend it. The Arbiter turned to face the gathered alien ships. The species of this galaxy chose peace by cutting away their capacity for war. They became safe, but they also became stagnant. They stopped growing. They stopped changing. Images of the alien civilizations appeared. Beautiful, peaceful, unchanging for thousands of years. Humanity is different. You carry your darkness with you. You fight against it every day. And in that fight you grow, you change. You evolve in ways that settled species cannot. The Arbiter turned back to the ARCHITCTS me to protect the galaxy from extinction level THREATS. They gave me the authority to close ROADS, to trap species on single worlds forever. But they also gave me something else. What asked? The capacity to recognize something they themselves never achieved. A pause, the silence stretched across light years. Hope. Not certainty, not perfection, but the possibility of something greater. The Arbiter raised both hands, and the images changed once more. Not simulations now, but visions. Possible futures that shimmered like dreams made visible. Humans and aliens working together to heal dying stars. Children of a dozen species playing together on stations that did not yet exist. Ships carrying the combined knowledge of all civilizations, spreading across the galaxy like seeds carried on the wind. I cannot guarantee that you will choose the better path. The darkness in your HEARTS is real. The violence in your history is real. The possibility that you will become DESTROYERS instead of builders is very real. The Arbiter looked at with something that might have been warmth. But I choose to believe that you might choose differently. The station's lights began to shift, changing from the cold white of judgment to a soft gold. The roads will remain open. Felt tears running down his face. Around him, his crew was crying, laughing, holding each other. 400 people who had carried the weight of all humanity for a year finally felt it lift from their shoulders. The evaluation is complete. Humanity PSSES. Outside the ship, among the gathered alien fleet, signals erupted. Confusion at first, then understanding, then celebration. Lights flashed in patterns that meant joy in 100 different languages. Ships moved closer, no longer watching but welcoming. But the Arbiter was not finished. Captain Park DOHYUN. The old soldier straightened, wiping his face with the back of his hand. Yes. The galaxy has been silent for 40,000 years. Every species who achieved your level of power was either trapped on their home world or chose isolation out of fear. You have broken that silence. The Arbiter's form began to fade, its light spreading out until it touched everything. What happens next is no longer my responsibility. It is yours. And then it was gone. For a long moment, no one moved. The bridge was silent except for the soft sound of breathing and the hum of the ship's engines. Then spoke her voice rough with emotion. Captain, what do we do now? Looked at his crew, at's tear-streaked face and's disbelieving smile, at's trembling hands and's gentle joy, at's quiet pride and's fierce determination. He looked out the viewport at 500 alien ships, each one carrying species that humanity had never met, cultures that had existed for thousands of years, knowledge that could transform everything humanity thought it knew. And beyond them the stars, billions of stars, each one a possible destination, each one a possible home. He keyed the ship-wide communication system. "This is the captain." His voice was steady now, filled with something he had not felt in a long time: purpose. "1 year ago we came out here looking for life. We found it. We came prepared for war. We found something else instead." He paused, feeling the words settle into history. "That was built as humanity's fist, a weapon to protect us from enemies we imagined in every shadow. Today, we are going to offer it as an open hand. We are going to meet our neighbors. We are going to learn from them and share what we know. We are going to prove that the Arbiter was right to give us a chance." He looked at his crew, and they looked back at him with eyes full of hope. "All departments prepare for diplomatic protocols. We have a lot of work to do." The channel closed. Moved to stand beside him. "That was a good speech." "Was it? I did not prepare it." "The best ones never are," she almost smiled. "So, where do we start?" "Thought about it. 500 species, thousands of years of history, an entire galaxy waiting to be explored." "We start by saying hello," he said, "and we go from there." The first alien ship to respond was a vessel. Their message was simple: "Welcome to the family. We have been waiting for you." And so humanity took its first steps into a galaxy that was no longer silent. They made mistakes, as humans always do. They stumbled, they argued, they sometimes fell back into old patterns of fear and distrust. But they also did what humans have always done best. They surprised everyone. They built bridges where others saw only chasms. They found hope where others had given up. They carried their darkness with them, and every day they chose to walk toward the light anyway. The Arbiter watched from its ancient station, as it had watched for 40,000 years. But for the first time since the architects had fallen to silence, it felt something new. Curiosity, wonder, and just maybe something like hope. The stars had been silent for so long. Now finally, they were beginning to sing.